So for the fourth quadrant isn't negative. No, 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 no. Negative here, it's not a value, it's rather a direction, right? It's rather a direction. So negative here, it means we agreed that to start here at the positive x-axis and calculate our angle. It's just an agreement, okay? It's just an agreement. So if you are referring to something in reference to something, so I give you an example. If you are in high story building and you are in the fifth floor. Now, relative to this fifth floor, if you are in the third, you are two floors down, right? But if I want from this point, I can then calculate the other direction from zero. It's the third floor, for instance, which will give you the same location. But if you agree that your reference point is this, then you need to calculate it according to the given standard or agreement. Okay. You got it, or do I need to explain it? You know, all of you know, for instance, the Greenwich mean time. Yeah. If you are in a country, you can say this is 2 hours behind, let's say, Greenwich Mean Time. But if you compare it to India, for instance, then you can say it's 4 hours after Indian time, for instance, yeah? Which will be the same. But we agree here on some reference point, which is always our reference point is this positive x-axis and moving counterclockwise. So that's why it will be calculated uniquely. So please be careful for such things. Okay, now I see we have some time to start with. Vic, any other questions? You're welcome. Okay, another questions? Okay, so we will start with vectors and vector algebra. Meaning, of course, algebra meaning operations, and vectors. I think this is now this is 1.5. Okay, so the previous one was 1.4, and vector algebra. So now vectors are actually everywhere in our life. So if you are driving, you are walking, you are moving, you are shooting a ball, you are throwing a stone, you are falling. So it's all vectors, movement, for instance, acceleration, whatever, not speed, velocity, for instance, and so on. And I'm sure that you if you study physics or you're studying mechanics, then you will be faced with vectors. If you are um, studying, for instance, what else? Vectors are in physics very often. Now, if we want to formally define a vector, what is a vector? So definition of a vector. What is a vector? So a vector is defined as a geometric object that has two features: magnitude and direction. Okay, so it has two features, magnitude and direction. Now, magnitude is sometimes referred to as length, sometimes norm, and whenever we talk about whenever we define abstract definitions, we introduce notations. So let's agree on the following notations. Now in literature you will see different notations for vectors. Okay, now we are going to use small letters. Now in print it will be maybe bold and then with an arrow on top of it. So for vectors A, B, V, might use it, W, U, whatever. Okay. Now in some literature, they just use the same bold character with a hat on top of it, or simply just bold character to distinguish it from points. And the corresponding, so this is for vectors. So vectors. Now for length or norm or what we call it magnitude, we are going to use a double bar. Sometimes it's used double bar here. See, this is similar to the absolute value, but when we talk about vectors, it means the length and so on. So sometimes even you might find something like a norm of, or you find ln of whatever. It refers to the length of the vector. Now, when we plot vectors, usually a vector is, so or sometimes if we are given the points of the vector, we can just use the following. So if I'm given the start and end point of a vector, I can evaluate the vector. So let's assume here, let's take in two dimensional, and it will apply to all others. So if this is x1, y1, this is x2, y2, we're going to call this a tail of the vector, and this is the head of the vector where the arrow is located. And we will use this notation for such vectors which we call point vectors. So the vector is given not as a unit, which is a vector, but as points. We will just call it A, B with an arrow on top of it. Okay. Now, how to evaluate this? We subtract the coordinates of the head from the tail component wise. Okay. We will do it in the exercises. For now, I think after we defined vectors, we can go for the break and then meet at 11:30 to continue with some operations. So as the title indicates, there are vectors and vector algebra. So here we have some specific, let's say, operations on vectors that are based on the nature of vectors, definitely different than those of numbers or any other algebras. So they have their own addition, subtraction, different types of multiplication that we will discuss in the next session. Okay, any questions?
No, sir.
Okay, if you don't have any questions, we will meet in 15 minutes time after the break. See you then. Goodbye. Okay, guys, I hope you can hear me now.